Hello, everyone. Sorry for the late start. Got a little distracted, but we're ready to go. We're going to be continuing our coding project today. Going to see how far we can get along on getting a object catalog set up within the game so that we can not only identify things. Hello, Bray. Welcome. So not only can we identify the various objects so that we could have like scripting and whatnot for them, but so we can do things like randomly select from them. We'll see how that works out. Let's check in with kitties first. We have Ember across from the desk. We have Sky up in his tree. We have Sammy over on the bed. Let's put that on Ember for now. I remember to... Yeah, I remembered to put this back. Alright, so this is where we were working last time. We did clean out Entity a bit. So Entity is its own template now. We have the catalog names that we need to get properly set up. So we have types already. Let's take a look at that real quick here. Okay, so these are very general markers. Like this is a scale multiplier, this is a speed adjustment. But this doesn't define it in the catalog. Like double speed here would have its own name in the catalog. So we need... I think we can just have... Now they need to be things that we're setting up in here. We don't need constants for them because they have a default value, but we're going to be setting them in the templates. Slightly longer term, I'm going to want a way to dump these out. And even further than that, we might be looking at maybe some JSON stuff, but I kind of like the templates so that we can avoid some data entry problems. Okay. Let's go in here and we're going to start setting those up. That's the player. We have the blob enemy, which means in our catalog object, we need to start getting these loaded up. So we have our arrays of weapons, arrays of enemies. We could have very specific typing for those just to force it, because I think it's a good idea to be able to differentiate. But do I want to have it where it is a constant value, or do I want it to be let's look at entity here. So it has a catalog name. We could export an enum to make it so that it's a type toggle. But we'll need to make sure that we have a way to understand it. This is for flags. This is for the mask, but for those that aren't aware, we're making a Vampire Survivor style game and we're still working through architecture. Visually, I think we had it back to runnable. So we still have it, functionally operating. I do want to see if I can solve the flicker of a blob that's right on top of you like that, but we'll have to work on it. The fun thing here is eventually they can't spawn anymore. And the other fun thing is that this is already a fail condition. This is, we should never reach this state because the player would be wiped out by now. Should stop at 1,000 if I recall. Nope, it's still going. I'll have to check that limit. Because we really only need 1,000 monsters. Like tops. Because past that, we start getting frame rate issues with their movement and rendering. You can see the buffer in the middle there going, so all of that's still functional. Should be stopping it at 1,000. Maybe I don't have that marker in. Oh well. I probably don't have that marker in there. Anyway. Where could we put this? We're defining constants here. I wouldn't mind ultimately moving these into entities themselves, but having it here makes it truly globally available. My voice is coming through a little quieter, so lower the music down a little bit. Do a quick little double check here. Okay. Let's see. Where do we want to put this? So what I'm thinking is to have a catalog type. And we're going to need to set that. It's not a flag. We just want this. Shape type flag, rectangle, or a circle. So if we look in one of our entities here, look at our constants. Where did we put shape type flag? Can use an array of strings. I don't really want that. Where did we put our shape type? Maybe I'll do a search. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's whatever the variable name is, so I think we're good there. Because we could do constant shape type thing for a catalog type. Yeah. It's this pairing right here. Catalog type will be... This way we don't have to make subclasses. But looking at it, we can specify a type. We can force it instead of having it fail. Let's force it instead of having it fail. So we're going to go into entities. And we're going to make a new inheriting type, which is going to inherit entity. A weapon type entity. What's the difference? There isn't one right now. But eventually we can have a difference. Two will inherit entity, and it will be an enemy entity. I don't like this a lot, but it allows us to keep the functionality of everything in the field being an entity, but it also allows us to be very clear this has to be an enemy type when we are loading them into the catalog. Enemy. So now we need a load weapons. Load enemies. Okay, so now when we have our catalog object, we can start loading them with very specific types. So we can look at our enemy blob, and instead of it being actual... Oh. Okay, enemy blob needs to be an instantiation of enemy entity and not of the enemy type and not of the entity type. So we're going to temporarily delete you, and we're going to create a new resource which extends enemy, and it's going to be an enemy blob. We'll actually make a new folder for these for now. That. Then we'll start going through and we will add more types here. Where do I have those? That's right, we haven't added the weapon templates in yet. Okay. So we can go into our catalog object and we can take enemy blob. And we can pop one of those here. So what we can do is assert errors or raise errors if we are duplicating a template here. But for now, we'll leave it be. What we want to be able to do is if we start duplicating this list, like we have things that we've already done, then we can start calling that out for list cleanup, that kind of thing. We'll make sure this runs. Actually, let's... So this preps them. Then name is a string, and it returns a weapon if going to... We need to make sure we don't get a null value out of this. As weapon name, then to return is a bar, not far. To return is a weapon, and it is equal to null. We want a bad reference if we call in a bad one. Turn is equal to weapons, weapon name. Okay, so this will let us get a template. If we go into game, we can say catalog get weapon. Oh, this needs to be enemies. Yeah. That. Spelled correctly. Good old spelling issues. Okay, so now we can go into game and we can say get enemy. This is something I'm not thrilled with, having a string constant floating around, so we're going to have to find a way to mitigate that. Okay, where are globals? Catalogs. Enemies to load has nothing. make sure we've got this right. Yeah, okay, that's what's wrong. Log. Save, reload the project. Log isn't. Okay, I'm going to remove catalog as a class name. We need to make an auto load here. Path, globals, catalog scene. Now we're doing the scene because what that lets us do is have these values defined. Fix that real quick. Log. Load. Didn't add it. Add. Sometimes you got to reload the project to kind of kick things over. Yeah. Now it recognizes it as a global. Camera should be getting set. But perhaps it's not. Huh. All these got purged. Okay. Path. Follower. HUD label. Floor tiles. Layer. Bullet. Enemy zone. We don't have the item zone yet. Tracker, we're not really using player tracker at the moment, but we do need camera. Okay, look at globals again. Catalog name undefined. Okay, I did not. I'm missing a lot of steps here. Gonna have to put an assert in there. Blobs always move to player. It's very tempting to start shifting a lot of these over to like JSON and similar. to populate them, but that runs some risks. So these are going to, it's not targeting, it's spawn position, and they spawn on spawner. Let's see. And for interactions, they I will leave the interactions alone for now. They have a texture, which is the blob. No listed lifespan. Initializing the entity, we create their pool of interactions, but that's why. So what we did is we actually created a empty value in the array of interactions for the blob. So this empty right here was the problem. Fixing. All right. We have blobs loaded from the catalog. Now, eventually, I think we're going to have a player catalog so that we can have different avatar types. Get your Vampire Survivors style thing where it's like, hey, this avatar gets loaded with kind of stuff. We'll see. Hey there, Isaac. Welcome. All right, catalog is started. So now we need to populate some more stuff. I do want to move these. We're moving them all down to a templates location so I can more easily find things that I want to use when I'm loading templates, when I'm messing with templates. Otherwise, I have to go hunting through the script folders. And find them even when I'm not dealing with scripts. Targeter. Some movement. Gonna have to come up with a better way to organize it, but you know. Set up some interactions in a moment here. Bullet hit has a very specific set. Okay, okay. So it is an interaction bullet hit. Let's keep those prefixes just so that we can actually, did I? Yeah. Still a bullet hit. Bullet hit is what makes it so that when it makes it so a weapon projectile causes harm when it strikes something. We might need variations on this. Because in theory, these are manipulable. Okay, we're just going to use a generic one for now. I'm not thrilled looking at this now, but I think this is still the way to go. So what we're looking at here is every base projectile will have a base kind of damage. That is for like the homing mouse. There will be homing mouse hit where it has a damage number, it has a base piercing to it. Subsequently, we can have modifiers to those payloads, but we're going to have to figure that out. We'll have to figure that out. Like, how will we modify the damage? We'll get something in there. So we're going to create another resource. This is interaction, enemy take damage. So again, this is a generic one. I'll make sure we don't need interaction in front of that. And by default, blob can take one hit. So then when we look at some of our others here, we don't need a weapons folder, and enemy blob can move down to our templates, as can player. So now we go to our interactions. Our incoming interaction will actually have something, which is enemy take damage. The puzzling element is not how to get it to where they have their own special take damage. Like, I can add a custom template in for that. But I want to be able to socket these in cleanly. So we'll see how this goes. Because I don't want to change the base template. Got to be careful about changing the base template, because that can splash across to other things. Okay, so now all right, templates moved around, so we're gonna have to make sure we get everything in place here. I'm going to go up into our globals again, and we're going to look at our player factory. Yes, I know the resource moved. This is not supposed to be dependent on that. Why? That's not supposed to do that when it fails that way. It's supposed to update these references when I move them around. Might have to set up a script to go through and purge the some of those files, so that when we move them, it doesn't detonate them. Because if we look at our catalog here, okay, no, the enemy blob is still in place. Wonder why that happened. Okay. Now let's make a base weapon here. Resource, it is a weapon type. It is a weapon. Homing mouse is it doesn't worry about navigation collisions. And it's already got the default collision because of where it will live. So we go up into our art here. The weapon mouse on it. We're going to add some movement. For now, it's going to be random direction. And then move straight line. And it will spawn on the player. be a faster way to do that. Oh well. And it has an outgoing interaction, which is bullet hit. Go into the game for the time being, and we are going to add another spawner, which instead of that is going to be weapon, and it will be homing mouse. We're going to change enemy blob into just blob because there's no reason outside of files to call it anything but blob. As long as there isn't another enemy called blob, I don't have to worry about a collision. Oh, and now I need to go into our catalog object, and we need to add that weapon that we just created. Just so. Which means now we should be able to find it. We do need to fix it so it rotates to face. Toggle for that somewhere. There it is. There we go. Okay, so we're back to being able to create weapons. We need now a way to add modifiers cleanly. Spawn at 0. Spawn on player. So we need to be very cautious about this. This is the tricky part here, because any sort of like level script needs to properly set these up. Which I may be able to sidestep that, but we'll see. Pattern, spread. Say 390. Player. To player. Roll. Move player is special. Move player just is taking input, like direct user input. Okay, so now we've defined all of those. We can go into our catalog and add them now. We've got our homing mouse, we've got our blob, we've got movement types. So let's add these. Oh, let's get you in there first. I'm not going to call it. It's a movement type, so this is modifier. We're going to be able to name them more concisely and descriptively, I think. We're just going to call that double speed. We'll rename the... I think I want to do this instead for the templates where possible. So, like, modifiers in similar are more likely to have specific incarnations. So if we look at pattern, how it's spread 390, we are just going to change that down to spread 3 and 90. That is a descriptive name. That is something that the player that should invoke what the player would see. Spawn points, probably not. Spawn points are probably going to be predetermined in the object, as will the base movements, but specific movements that you can see and interact with will have different names specific to their incarnation. I'm going to our catalog. Let's get these loaded now. Movements. So we have loaded enemies, load movements. So we're going to have 5 of them real quick here. So we have double speed, move to player, move spiral, straight line, and move to player. We're going to add 2 more. Got target player in random direction. For positioners, we currently only have a few. 2, 3, 4. We have the spread shot. We have spawn at the center of the screen, on the player, and on the monster spawn track. And for interactions, we have a pair of them. We have bullet hit, default bullet hit, and enemy take damage. We're gonna have to come up with a way to apply damage modifiers, as well as we might be able to get away with some global values for things like damage modifiers, but there needs to be a way for an individual projectile to have it. I think we're still going to be setting up, like, this is base homing mouse damage kind of stuff. I kind of would like to keep that together with the weapon, but no. We'll see. We'll see. Functioning still. So now what we want to have is some way of... Okay, every so often we need to get a random one from this collection. So these are all the load ups. We don't need to worry about this right now. So we now have a dictionary of objects here. Um, ah, I feel like we should split positioners into modifiers and patterns and spawn points because I don't want to get spawn on player as a modifier for the player to encounter. Almost all weapons will spawn on player or spawn on like random position as opposed to like spawn on spawn path kind of stuff. It's still possible, but those are also going to be defined by the weapons. Array, positioners. So spawn points to load now. This does make me really think that I should segregate these further, that spawn points are a type of thing. It is still a positioner. Spawn points behave just like positioners, but they need to be very separated because there's no reason for a spawn point to be set later in the positioner chain. Uh, and there's no reason, like, it shouldn't be set after spread shot because it would do nothing. The position needs to be determined outright. So just asking that a positioner, spawn position, what it should be doing makes sense. That we would not query a special thing like the full positioner chain. We could just say, what's your spawn point? But as far as interacting with it goes, yeah, they're like entirely different things when I think about it. Okay. We're going to think on this a little bit more. We might just circle back around in a moment. But quick break in the interim. Oh, well, we'll answer that question before we go on break. This is going to be a Vampire Survivors style game. So, gameplay wise, it is just, you know, you move around, you try to dodge monsters, you hope that your attacks are coming fast enough to kill the monsters. This is not like how gameplay is going to be as we're showing it. This is test stuff. We're still in architecture. Narrative wise, there's stuff to that. It's kind of character backstory and whatnot. That's interesting. That's not supposed to be. We'll have to address that in a moment. But like I said, be right back. Quick break. Okay. So as we can see, it's going beyond the spawn limit that it should. And especially with monsters, that shouldn't be the case. With projectiles, we need to make sure that we're very lenient about spawning more projectiles within reason. So what I was just thinking on is that spawn points shouldn't be determining anything about whether you should spawn or not. And in fact, this was a problem during the coding of it. I feel like this needs to be entirely its own thing. Where when we get the position, so let's just close everything else for now. So if we look at actual logic for spawning here, so spawn on player. So a lot of this logic is just to make spawners work right. So get spawn position is a master function here that almost all of them are going to do a little differently. So if we look at a spread pattern here, so we can see get spawn position is not being set up in here. Only actual spawn position ones do that. And actual spawn position ones don't do any of this other stuff. So I feel like we should change that. That it shouldn't be a thinking that it should not be a positioner. Spawn points are special things, and that means they can be made intrinsic to an entity. And we can also make particular movement elements in an entity intrinsic to them. So there are adjustable ones and there are intrinsic ones. Yeah, I kind of like that. Oh, Ember moved. Let's check on where Ember went. If we can even see her. Sherbet woke up and came to visit. We can't see her, which means she's probably getting a drink of water or something. Let's switch over to the bed. There tends to be some cat traffic over there. Okay. Let's start that ball rolling. We're going to switch over to cams. I'm going to do a quick commit. Save it so I don't lose too much of today if something goes haywire. So again, what we're looking at here is that spawn positions aren't really positioners. They are completely separate concepts. So bursts, all of those, any of them that are actually doing kind of what we think of as positioning, don't call the get positioning logic. get spawn position is called early on, but there should only ever be one spawn position, and we should just call it. Yeah. Which means these guys could be changed to only say what's our spawn position. And if they're spawn positions, we don't care about their position or type. Now, we will need to make a new pool for that if we go down that road. But I think this is beyond... Oh, Sherbet's walking by. Is Ember's spot open? Ember has left one of the primo spots vacant. And she has just returned to see that Sherbet took her spot. Hello, baby. Oh. Sherbet is very mobile around the location. He tends not to linger as much as the rest of them. We do catch him napping in a lot of places, but it's not like Sammy where she will nap on Sammy or Mason where they're napping on camera most of the time. Even Ember is more static than he is. All right, how do we want to go about this? So I think I can just make a class that is a spawn point. And a spawn point needs set template values. It needs a type. It'll need an initialize. And it will need a get spawn position. But it doesn't need to be internal. And it doesn't need to have an input. All right, let's do this. Actually, let's pull the trigger on this other thing instead. So we have interaction, we have entities. Movement in position are separate of spawners. So we're going to do this. But as soon as we do that, stuff breaks. So, I'm going to... we're going to go into the file system for a moment here. We need to get the project files here. See if I can locate them again. User data folder. I think it might actually be in the repo. So there is a temp data folder for a project that stores off, there we go, the Godot folder. we should be able to reload it and it totally won't explode. That's not what we want. We want... Oh, all that's active. All those are still loaded. Player template is not set. Okay, so what's different about Player Factory? What about catalog? Did I break catalog? Because if we look, all the dependencies are actually in place. All of these are where they should be. This is why I saved it off, just to be sure here. Look at the kitties while I fix this. So reloading it in this fashion should be clearing out the cache that is the problem here. Sure, all the globals are loaded properly. Because the scene file is not being parsed properly. It's like the corresponding scene element. So like all of this is correct, but the fact that they're referencing resources seems to throw it off when I move those, but that shouldn't actually be the case. We should also be getting it where it is like fully refreshing it. There's effectively a cache of the objects and where they live. There. All those are there. These are valid references. But if I go in and I try to open it, homing mouse. Why just that one? Yeah. If we look, all of these are not loading properly at the moment. So let's look at our relevant classes here. Weapon extends entity, enemy extends entity, entity extends resource. All of these are correct, but all of my resource files have blown out when that happened. All right, let's. There's got to be a way to address this. All of those changed, but the scenes did not change. The scenes have not changed. To edit this, so we'll keep the cams going while I do this. All of the scenes have actually been updated as well. So then if we look at layer template, And it's referencing the corresponding resource. Else might be there. Because these aren't loading. It's like, yeah, it's like all of their scripting went away when I did that. All right, let's restore it real quick. So what's different when we do that? Because we know all of these were still valid references. Folder. All right, let's do one more try. Hey there, drunken dwarf. We're doing okay. Let me turn this back on. So there's a bit of folder restructuring I'm trying to do here, and I'm bouncing off of it because of it's really a Godot editor problem. We're setting up entity catalogs. Oh, okay. Well, let's fix something relevant while we're in here. So if we go into entity logic and specifically the init logic. We weren't setting texture properly. Uh, uh, I would say that's generally not true, but it's also like for a lot of folks, there's also just the motivation to do it. Let's make sure that this functions properly. Learning to code is like learning a new language. It's possible at any age. Yeah, it's easier when you're younger. Uh, at least with like spoken languages. But coding is like any other like work scale or anything like that. You can pick them up. A lot of it is just taking that first step. Okay, we've wiped out a lot of weapon entities. Let's jog along to the side here. Running to the side, a whole bunch of things on the right-hand side of the screen are going to go away. And the reason we're forcing that is we want some of the entities that were projectiles to be recycled. Let me test that real quick. Still crackling? Yep. Yep, that is it. That is the problem. Well, we know what the problem is. Now it's a matter of spotting it cleanly. I also set up a way for me to self-test. If somebody mentions that the audio is off, I can check it. And I can tell if that fixes it. I have a little button that echoes it. Yeah, if you're watching and it ever sounds weird or something like that, just let me know. I can fix it. It's just a matter of knowing that it has gone wrong. I have another way that I might be able to catch it since music is going through the same pipeline right now. I might be able to have it double back for when I'm streaming. Okay, so we've got the catalog in place. Oh, okay. I'm gonna hold trying to fix the folder structure until offline because that's going to require some research as to why Godot does that. Okay, so what we'll do with an entity, we are going to add a new export. So right now we have positioners. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make a new entity type that is a spawn point. And that spawn point is going to be invoked before we invoke the positioners. Because right now spawn position is a special use case for positioners. All other positioner types are things that change, like the facing, or they adjust the spawn position essentially, but they don't tell you where. So a spread shot doesn't say that it spawns on the player. A burst shot doesn't say it spawns on the player. It is a spawn point style positioner. So the spread shot doesn't do anything with the spawn point related function calls and vice versa. And it creates it makes the spawn point ones have special there are special hoops that you have to jump through to put the spawn point ones in the positioner chain. So I'm going to make a new entity type. Well, a new modifier thing. And I'm not going to put it under spawner because that's part of our problem right now. Create a new script. It's going to inherit resource. It is a spawn point. Just so. Then we're going to go to positioner and we're just going to kind of borrow a bunch of that logic at the moment. This software, the IDE and the engine that I'm using is Godot. Specifically, Godot 4.2.1 Mono, I think. 4.2.1 stable mono. The code language is GD script. You can use C sharp for this, but to do that, you will be using a different IDE and a different workflow. GD script talks directly to Godot's engines, as opposed to going through like a translation layer for mono. For C sharp. C sharp can be faster for some things, but GD script is twofold. It is a direct interaction, so it's supposed to be better for like interacting with the core systems of the Godot engine. Hey there, Lewis. But it's slower for raw calculation. Okay, so then in a positioner, we have so one of the ongoing jokes about using ChatGPT for coding and for a lot of things is that people writing those kind of things right now using those base systems that are being made available uh, are scraping the internet for training data. And we're going to set aside all of the ethics and all of that kind of stuff for the purposes of this example. But they're scraping all of that. And they are now producing in great quantities AI generated content. Like for videos, you can see channels on YouTube that are doing nothing but spitting out AI content. Hey there, Cheesy. Like you can see the watermark on the videos that says it is from a video generation tool using like ChatGPT or similar. Those videos are subsequently going to be scraped into those training data pools, which means AI is going to be getting trained on AI data. And then subsequent training batches will have the same thing over and over, and it's going to cause a training data problem. The only reason those art generators work even as well as they're capable of right now is that at some point in the process, a human being made something that is coherent to a human being. What kind of game should you make as a starter one? Simple platformers. A lot of game engines have the logic for that baked in. Like side-scrolling shooters, twin-stick shooters. If you want to go 3D, some basic like FPS kind of stuff can be pretty straightforward because, again, most of the engines have a lot of the physics and objects that you need baked in. Kind of like drag and drop kind of stuff. If you want it to be good and you want it to exceed like practice, then you'll need to do more. But that's a great starting point to learn the engine and learn the basics of some of the design principles with making a game. Cat names. Let's show the kitty cats so I can tell you the cat names again. Looks like everybody's in widescreen mode, so I can tell you that. Top center is Sherbet. He has taken Ember's spot. It's apparently a bit of bath time. Ember is in her second choice spot. So Sherbet is straight ahead of me across from my keyboard, and Ember is to my right. Oh, we've got all of them. We have Sky up in his cat tree. That's his spot. And then over on the bed, we have Mason on the blanket and Sammy on the pillow. Sammy does prefer that pillow, though it is kind of a contested location. There are a few of them that like to lay there. But for the most part, during stream, it's nap time for the kitties, and they all kind of have their spots. Today, Crashlander, we are wrapping up some of the base logic for the catalog thing. To do that, I'm making an adjustment to the positioner logic chain, where instead of having your spawn point be part of the positioner chain, instead the spawn point will be its own thing. Like an entity will have a separate field that this is where you spawn. That's going to let me do a couple of things, but for the most part what it does is trim down the logic so I don't need to have special differentiation. When I say, give me a random power-up for the player, I don't ever want it giving the player a spawn point, because that is lacking in impact in every way. So I want to strongly differentiate those. The other is they're never likely to change. If I create a weapon that spawns at a random point on the screen, that weapon should always spawn at a random point on the screen. How it gets there and when it gets there, that's different. So some of the pieces, so here, let me... Okay. So the background art and the frames on the stuff, and some of those elements are all things that I have commissioned. This whole avatar is commissioned. The layout of things, so how I position the computers, that kind of thing, how I've composited it, where the screens are, how I've set up the cameras, and how they're displayed. Effectively, everything except the art is stuff that I've done. I absolutely do not have the layer of the level of skill necessary for this kind of art. Now, the art in the game is mine. I can do 16 by 16 pixel art. Haha. Okay, so we need to initialize it. It's going to need to have a catalog name. I only speak English, Lewis. Wouldn't mind learning another language at some point. You know, time limitations. Kind of what we were discussing earlier. There are a lot of tools out there that would make it more viable. It's not like it's a I have to take a class kind of thing. But balancing where you want to spend your time and which activities of spending time you value more. All right, Dwarf. Thanks for joining us. Most spawn points aren't going to have a special thing, but some of them are. Some of them are. So that's okay. So this is all that spawn points do. None of the other positioner types do anything with this. And that's part of the problem. Like, if I do spawn on player. Spawn on player doesn't really do anything with this. All the spawners need to have this. Spawner says, hey, if you adjust position, I'm done. because I don't actually do anything with that. I just use this as a flag. Um, so all of this is footwork to make it so that an entity that does this works in the chain. So I can just make an entity that does this. So take that. Does not use this. Vector 2.0. And that's a spawn point. Um, I'll make some new names for these. Most of them won't need initialize, but they can. And spawn points should pretty much override all of these things. Okay. So now we need to go into our spawn positions logic. And these extend spawn point now. Commence explode. Oh, they need set template values too. You may ask a question, yes. Feel free. I am the prototype nanotype, Lewis. The proto nanotype. The nanotype being the second product from the Catbot Corporation. The original Catbot was very popular, and they decided to up their game and make a new, more capable domestic robot. Plate as a spawn point. In the default logic, it will just pass. Huh, that's backwards. Effectively, set template values says stamp this over top of your values. I actually had it backwards there. Will not override. It has nothing to initialize. Actually, it does. Nope, it doesn't do anything special. There is no adjust position. There is no done adjusting. There is no start or continue. There is only get spawn position. That is all that most spawn points need. They don't care. You just ask them, "Hey, where should you spawn?" And every time it will generally recalculate and spit that out. Oh my god. There we go. Special with any of that. Does need a set template values though. Actually, it doesn't do anything with that. Spawn on player, very simple entity. All it does is return wherever the player is. Spawn on spawner, little bit different. But we should still be in a pretty good position there. Have that. Same here, we have a global function for that. Then randomly on screen. We're gonna clean that up. Hey there, Lore. Welcome back. Doesn't need special initialization, doesn't adjust position or... That is relevant. Not really, though. Because it doesn't really have a saved position. It's going to do this every time you call it. Hey there, barbed wire. Is it? It's not? Oh my god, it wasn't. So there's an idiosyncrasy with how the YouTube streaming starts. Is if you are not looking at the page when it does that, it won't actually start, even if it shows the little button that says you're live. If it's still loading and you aren't looking right at the page, it's not in focus, it doesn't always start. And it looked like it started, but it didn't. This explains why everybody's coming through widescreen format today. That's unfortunate. Not that people are coming through widescreen, it's just that people aren't able to find the tall format. Womp womp. All right, all of our spawn points are changed into spawn points now. That's gonna break some stuff. But in our spawner logic, now spawners have a positioner chain, but it's not quite right. Like, we don't need to initialize the positioner. It's not part of the chain, I should say. Let's create a pool for that. All right. Thanks for swinging through barbed wire, and thanks for letting me know. Just do inherit node. It's empty. Doesn't need a class name. It doesn't need a variety of... No, it does. Like all of them, it needs a variety of pools because every individual implementation of an entity or similar could be a different type of thing. Like, we have to have pools. We have to ask them, what kind are you? Because each individual implementation of an entity, each template, could actually be a different class type. And if it is, we need to handle that accordingly. Okay, which means every positioner could be a different class type. So entity pool, I think, is a good basis for our spawn point pool. Hello there, dead team. Sorry for not getting the tall form up in time. Or in a timely fashion, or at all, however you want to look at it. Fixing all the things. Spawn point. yet. Welcome back. A lot of live streams have really different vibes there, Dead. Really do. I prefer a more laid back feel. Even if we're playing a horror game, you know? Hey there, Copperpot. Chicken tenders. The the I don't want to admit I'm having chicken nuggets of frozen foods. Though I will say some chicken tenders are actually strips of discernible meat. And it uses spawn point pool. Oop. Okay. So now we have the concept of spawn points. Entities need a spawn point. So they have an array of positioners. Like so. Hey there, Nina. Day is going well. Day is going well. We're making progress. So when we're setting the template in an entity, we need to make sure template dot spawn point. So then when we spawn them, we create the positioner chain. You were running low, huh? Wait. Create the entity. In entity, when we initialize it, that's interesting. So this is potentially another performance hit that we were taking here is when we create the positioner chain. Oh, no. Okay, we're good. Positioner pool. Great. Good, good. Spawn point. On point cool dot create. Okay, so we create our own instance of the spawn point that's in the template. We always have to make sure to do that. I still think positioner chain here. No, that's part of the... Yeah. Whenever we're appending the positioners to use, we create new ones. Okay. Okay. So whenever we spawn them, we have a position to spawn at. Okay, get spawn position here. So instead, we're going to say spawn point dot get spawn position. It does not care about a location. All of them are going to get the same position unless it's a randomizer. So random position on screen. Oh. We could just get the new entity position here. Yeah. We pass in 0 to it. Position is set in when it's fixed. Is if we get a random position, we're going to spawn however many we should spawn in a sequence for should continue loop. But what if we have a burst fire? What if we've applied a burst fire to a spawn at random position? Do we spawn 3 in a burst, each at a random position, or do we spawn at a particular random position 1, 2, 3? Is equal to vector 2, 0. Hey there, clowns. How you doing? Game is moving along. We're making some adjustments to spawn logic. In setting up the catalog, I realized that spawn points are part of positioners. They were, but that would mean that if I get a random positioner, I could get a spawn point, and for the player, that's meaningless. Like, we don't want, say, the Vampire Survivor's Lightning Bolt to spawn on the player all the time. And if the player were to get a power up, they would level up, and one of their choices was spawn on player. That doesn't feel impactful because only one of those can really be active at a time. Copper, I have 5 cats, 2 of which are visible. Okay, so we have a current spawn position. And we have a point where we say start spawning. Start spawning is the reset point. So is equal to spawn point get spawn position. We do that there. Did I break it? Oh, wait. Yeah, I totally broke it. Uh, we're going to take a quick break and then I'm going to fix that. Be right back. And we're back. Okay. So now we need to make sure that all the entities have a spawn point. Why are you broken? That's a nice thing there, fan. All of the values should be there for this. There. Okay. Okay. So now in positioners, we no longer have a spawn on position because that's invalid. Instead, we need to go into our templates. Now, these templates should now be spawn points. Yep. So these should be valid entries here. So we're going to go spawn on spawner. Yep. Then for weapon homing mouse, we say spawn on player. And then for the player, we say spawn at 0. What's your question? Press play. And it explodes. Okay, okay. Type. Hello, Sherbet. How does it move? If positioners size is greater than 0, then we have our chain, but we need to make sure that whenever we reference it, what produces it? Generally, temperature differences. So, like, it's cool over top of the ocean usually. You can get banks of heat near like edges of mountains and similar. Those changes in temperature can create up and down drafts because it'll heat the air and it'll rise up, or it'll cool the air and it'll fall down. That kind of thing that can create airflow. I think the rotation of the planet is one of them. You have a lot of combinations of things. But temperature variation is a big one. all of these places where positioner chain is going to be empty. I've been through a variety of education there, Nina. Though nowadays, there's a lot of this stuff that you can pick up online too. Okay, if we have no positioner chain, positioner chain tells us how we should spawn. But if we don't have one, it's just, sure, spawn one. The interval is up. Different learning patterns work for different folks. There are folks that especially thrived when the whole school at home thing happened, for the incident. And there are folks that have real difficulties being sat at a desk in a classroom. Okay, so we've introduced the idea that the positioner chain could be empty. We're going to say you have to have a spawn point. That seems pretty solid. But you don't have to have a positioner chain. I have played Among Us, Nina. Among Us is personally one of those games that you need to play with like minded friends. I have been in circumstances where you have people that are just of a different personality type, even if friends, and it doesn't work out. I have been in circumstances where it is a bunch of randos, essentially, and it gets really uncomfortable. Like, I don't like the idea of playing games like Among Us where everybody is just shouting over top of everybody else. You can learn stuff from games. It is possible. Not all games teach you highly applicable things. Minecraft can teach creativity. It can also teach. It can also reinforce existing social norms amongst the group of people playing. It can. Uh, it can still be in situations where people do not learn to be creative. They just mimic what they see. So I saw this streamer do this thing. I do the exact same thing. Hurrah! I'm like that streamer. Um, Among Us can teach deductive reasoning. It can also teach, again, that reinforcement of social norms within a group, that shouting over top of each other concept that I mentioned. Um, Shooters can teach strategic thinking, well, tactical thinking. They can help you build things like reflexes, or they can show you how to be a jerk online. Just like any activity, reading books can do that kind of thing. Just chatting can do that kind of thing. All of these are potentially interactions either with media or people, or both. You got to kind of think of it as radiation, The more of it you get exposed to, the more it affects you. I think that's actually a really good way to consider media consumption. Radiation. Okay. So this changes a fundamental part of the spawner. If we pull spawn point out of positioner, we need to build into all of the logic loop that I can't just talk to the positioner chain. I need to have a layer of abstraction. So should continue spawn loop. Should stop after one iteration. If I don't have so should continue loop becomes false after one iteration. So Skia, very clearly a cat person. And I could say, hey, look, there's a cat on the camera. I have 8 cameras dedicated to cats. So that's one part of the response. The other is, look at my ears. But hello, Skia, hello. Okay, we ask, should we continue the spawn loop? And we repeatedly ask that. If delta is 0 and we have no position chain, then the answer is no, because you've already asked us before. If no time has passed, then a lack of a spawner chain means do not. Yes, Nina. There are a lot of caveats to self-defense. This is assuming you're in the U.S. One of the principles of self-defense is retreat. If a person has fled and they cease to be an imminent danger to you, so they're not backing off and, carrying a ranged weapon kind of thing, then you are no longer under immediate threat of bodily harm. If you were to pursue them and attack them further, that's still assault. Self-defense ceased to exist. Now, that doesn't mean that there are going to be courts that don't ignore that entirely. But self-defense is nuanced. Potato. Action horror art. Can you define that? What? There are 2 descriptors on that, and I don't understand what the distinction between horror and action horror as far as art is. Is it just, a dynamic scene versus a fixed, like a POV kind of thing? Monsters fighting. I mean, at that point, I think it crosses into any sort of action scene. The horror becomes a... The horror becomes more content. As in, it becomes a choice of, like, nuance and what the figures are, but it then becomes an action scene. There are plenty of airsoft weapons, Nina, that can look realistic if you don't have all of the attachments on it. And even then, There are, setting aside discussions of behavior of law enforcement and their adherence to the actual law. Walking around with an exposed airsoft could still confuse or worry enough people that you have an actual weapon, and that is going to attract attention to you. You shall be hassled. It's kind of like the era, there was an era when toy guns were made to look very realistic. You know, lots of gloss black and chrome metal looking toy guns. And after some incidents, the next thing was that all of those toy guns had to have little orange dealies at the end of them, like on the muzzle, to try to show, oh, but this is a toy gun. And that wasn't enough. And that's why most Nerf stuff is like all neon colored. Not sure how to pronounce that. Is that like an acronym there, SLM? I speak English only. Okay. Okay. So we can't check delaying yet. So I'm just going to say there, SLM, you need to be careful now with your behavior. That you have received the only warning you're going to get on that kind of thing. Um, Horror is tricky in presentation. There are lots of different types as far as um, what kind of vibe you're trying to get. I am partial to psychological and eldritch horror, primarily because those are more mental as opposed to physical. If it's going to be just imagery, like without the context of what kind of scenario it is being presented as, then I like it to be surreal, like otherworldly. Like Jason or Freddy Krueger or any other form of like slasher creature. Usually not. I mean, it's just gore or violence at that point. Doesn't give me the horror vibe. Hey there, Ethan. Welcome. Okay. Okay. If position or chain. There is no position or chain. Then, if delta is greater than 0, should continue. Oh. Should continue is equal to delta is greater than 0. Else, do that. Um, Lewis, cats are doing well. You can see Ember is having a nice little nap there. She is cozy. Um, Black and white art, just like heavy monochrome, can give you a lot. There is a great deal of detail that is conveyed by light and dark. So you can get a lot of results that way. Thanks for swinging through, Nina. So to give you an example, Potato, as far as horror is concerned, my current favorite is the recent Nicolas Cage version of The Color Out of Space. It is personally, at least in my opinion, the best adaptation of cosmic horror, of a Lovecraft story, but in particular cosmic horror. There are a few moments where you see a monstrous thing, but that is very much not the focus of the movie. The visuals that they have and the behavior of the characters is a bigger portion of that presentation. Even the environment is a big portion of it. I presume by analog, do you mean the media that it is created in? Or something else? Some form of the aesthetic, the tools? I'm not sure what you're getting at. Like, for example, do you mean practical effects in a movie? Do you mean. I know somebody referred to like found footage kind of things. Think I recognize Vita Carnus. Like in general, there are gimmicks with media that I feel people give them more credit than they deserve intrinsically. So, like found footage style. The look, here's a VHS recording of this stuff that's happening is not in and of itself good. The execution, if it aligns with what you're trying to do, can be good. Um, like there was a period where found footage was all the rage, and many of them did it bad. The classic example of doing it bad is the shaky cam aiming at your feet. Shaky cam makes sense. Video overlays for like a camcorder makes sense. But a person running with a camcorder aimed straight down at their shoes because the filmmaker thinks just having it looking through a lens makes it, convincing found footage. No, because why would you hold the camcorder that way? I'm willing to suspend disbelief that you're continuing to cling to it just out of fear induced forgetfulness. Like, I'm just holding it tightly as I run. I'm not really thinking about holding it kind of gimmick. I never think, hey, this plastic doodad in my hand could be a wonderful bludgeon to keep the thing away from me. We can suspend disbelief for that, but Sneaker Cam just throws it right out the window. I'm told I haven't actually watched it, but I think there was a series, there was a movie, and then potentially some sequels called Paranormal. I think where they set up security cameras in their house to try to find out what was going on, and the movie is presented in that fashion. That's kind of cool. I think that's a good usage of kind of in-world POV. If that's the kind of thing you mean, like a diegetic point of view, I think is what it would be called, then that makes sense. That works. In world point of view can be interesting. There was an action movie called, I think it was Hardcore Henry, that did a good job of that. That was kind of fun, where everything was from the point of view of the lead, of the point of view character. So never that third person camera work, all like straight through their eyes. It was pretty cool. Okay, so we don't have a positioner chain, and we've already called it once, which means it would equal 0, so we should not continue. If we do have a positioner chain, then we defer to the positioner chain. So should continue gets invoked. Um, if positioner chain, then we do this. Else we do this. And again. All right. Ugh. It's the only place I have to do this inside the spawner, so it doesn't feel terrible, but... So we head into the loop once. Oh, wait. We have no position or chain. We're always going to do this. So that will update the time since last spawn. There's no position or chain. So we're always going to say okay. If delta is greater than 0, way too complicated. I really don't like this. Default, it's false. If then continue is equal to true. All right, thinking through this. So if I have no positioner chain, so Lovecraft mythos, Lovecraft and his associated pen pals mythos. Um, the concept is less about a person finding the knowledge goes mad, and more about experiencing something that is outside of your actual ability to comprehend it. So there are times when it's sloppy, where it's just big or scary, but most of the time that it's executed well in those books, in short stories, is that the person sees something that makes so little sense for their worldview that they now have some sort of fundamental terror. Alternately, it's that that has already happened and that the narrator is unreliable now. I think it's called The Music of Eric Zahn. It might be called something else, but the story is effectively a person gets lost in the streets and finds a dead end alley, an alley that leads up to a series of places where you can't see, to a place where the overhanging buildings and the like block out the sky. And it ends with a house where they can hear somebody playing music, and it's beautifully talented violin music. And they go in to listen to the guy, and they're really sociable with each other, and everything's great, except at a particular time of night, the violinist gets really paranoid, gets really scared, and sends the guy away. Like, you have to leave right now. Go away. This happens a couple of times, and the guy gets curious and tries to like sneak in again after he has been told to leave. And he can hear this music that spirals into weird sounds and similar. And upon walking in and startling the guy, he can see him. He sees him just frantically playing, driving himself to exhaustion, sweating, that kind of thing. He walks in and startles the guy, and he stops playing, and that guy just gets sucked out into space through the window, the only place in that area that you would be able to see the sky. There are associations of what might be happening with the mythos, the entities involved. but it's more the general build up to that moment. Del Toro did a series called Cabinet of Curiosities, I think. I think it was on Netflix, where they did a couple of Lovecraft stories. One of which was, oh, I can't remember the title now. I think it's like Pickman's Model or something like that. Where the overall story is that there is an artist who draws these incredibly detailed, talented things, but they're really horrific. They are body horror, they are gruesome scenes, but the detail, the quality of the art is amazing. Super realistic. And there's both. The community doesn't like it because it's grotesque, but the other artists around him recognize the talent, the quality of what's being produced. But the guy will never let them see him work. And inevitably, as with a lot of Lovecraft stories, the curious guy sneaks along to spy. And what he finds out is that Pickman is drawing from a model. The creatures and whatnot that he has been drawing are real things. There is something there. And in the original story, that's where we stop. The observer snaps because of that. And that's kind of the end of it. It's that is just too much for the observer to handle. Begin Lovecraft overly flowery, bloated text about how terrible it was. Del Toro drops the ball entirely. And instead of it just ending there, you have the point of view character steps in and burns the place down and drives the creature away. But he returns home only to find out that his family saw the model, the paintings, and they went insane, and his wife kills his kid in a gruesome fashion. And that's... No. That wasn't the point. That doesn't carry the story or the feeling at all. That's just more gore. Oh, okay. Okay, so we don't have a positioner chain. That means we only have a spawner. We need to have an amount of time having passed. If we did, we increment it. We check and see if our interval has passed. And if it has, we're ready to roll. If we don't have time, then it's still false. We don't need to do that. It's already false coming in here. So it only becomes true if we get all the way here. If we do have a positioner chain, then we jump through the hoops of asking the chain if we should continue. There are a lot of hoops involved in that because you can have things like delays and what have you. Okay. Should continue. If we have a positioner chain, we talk to the positioner chain. Otherwise, if we don't have a chain, we're going to get the spawn position. Check is ready. If we're ready, if positioner chain. Oh, this is... I don't like that at all. Oh, I may figure out a way around this later. Okay, if we have a positioner chain, we ask it again, are you ready to spawn? Otherwise, it's false. If there's no chain, we will only trigger all of this once. And should continue, again, we'll say if there's no chain, and you've already asked us, like time needs to have passed, then we won't. We will return false. If not position or chain. Eat a taco. What kind of tacos do you like? I like Taco Bell tacos. I always have people, oh, you should try a real taco. You should try an authentic taco. I have. I don't like them. For me, it's like meat, cheese, sauce, crunchy shell. That's it. Let lettuce if I have to. Lettuce is inoffensive, but lettuce is also just it might as well be parsley. It's just at most it's a light extra crunch that's kind of watery. In general, it often turns into soggy fiber. Laura, I think you might have fallen behind on the stream. Okay, we don't need to assert that there's a position or chain. Potatoes. Um, I like mashed potatoes. Potato. Baked potatoes can be okay. I mean, they're an inferior mashed potato. I just like mashed potatoes in general. I even like the kind of reconstituted powdered type. Uh, yeah. Okay. Initial direction. Okay. So we have some more here. Only do that if there's a position or chain. Now we have initial direction. Now, previously, if I just had a spawn point, there would be no initial direction. Like if I just had spawn on player, there would be no initial direction. Two is equal to vector 2, 0. If position or chain. then initial direction is actually equal to that. And then we do that. All right, spawn points exist. Huzzah, and what have you. Okay, 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 okay. Then we go into our catalogs. So our patterns and modifiers. So we really only have one positioner. And now with spawn points, we have 3. Oop. 2. Oh, gotta reload the project. Just calm down a little, potato. Calm down a little. Dial it back. And 3. Okay. Okay. Again. Okay, spawn points exist in a catalog. I don't necessarily need it to exist in a catalog, but they might as well. Spawn. No, they still have a catalog name. Good. Good. Now we need an idea of this is true, Lore. This is true. The I've just never been never been fond of putting lettuce on a sandwich. If it's fresh and it's placed carefully so that it doesn't get all soggy and the like, then it adds a bit of a crunch, you know? But if it's going to start to wilt almost immediately because of the heat and positioning of it, and if the it already has a crunch to it, then what's the point? Lettuce isn't even very fibrous. I mean, and it usually doesn't have much by way of taste. Okay, so now we need the idea of the player's inventory, where that's where we're going to move the spawners to. We're also going to need to set up we then need a way to tell the player area that the game areas, what the game area's zones are. So when it's creating spawners, it can have that set up. that is when the player thinking when we create a new weapon on the player that we can tell the inventory essentially you've got a new weapon object and it generates it. Um, which means the player inventory needs to know where the weapon zone is. Yeah. Okay, so now we need a new global thing. Player inventory. Right here. Are definitely going to need to be careful with these auto loads. Oh. Okay. Okay. What do we do? I think we pause for now is what we do. Oh, we do need to think on this a little further. I do want to do some more programming streams. I'd like to start sooner tomorrow. We'll see if that happens. All right, so what we did is we got the catalog infrastructure set up. We made it so that entities have subclasses that we can use if we need to, where there's a difference between enemies and weapons. They still have all of the basic logic of an entity, so they still do the movement chain, all of that kind of stuff. But other objects can see them as a specific class, which will be useful for the catalog. You know, give me random weapon. Then we went through and we split spawn points out of the idea of positioners. That makes it so that, one, we don't have to jump through extra hoops with the positioners as far as getting spawn positions. We don't have a weird split logic in the chain. It also means we can have things that are just spawning without positioner logic. As in, they spawn wherever they spawn, and they spawn on a fixed interval. I don't intrinsically need to have like burst or anything like that. That will actually be useful for the weapons because then they won't intrinsically have positioner objects. I think eventually what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that the movement chain will probably have an intrinsic part to it, as in like what it targets and how it initially moves, but then all of the subsequent stuff will be handled by the power-ups. We'll see. We're just about there, though. The player inventory global is where we'll be working next. Okay. So next stream is going to be tomorrow. We're going to be continuing our coding. We will start by 4 p.m. U.S. Central. Okay. Well, I hope everybody had a good time watching tonight. We did make some progress If you like what you saw and would like to see more, remember to like, comment, subscribe, follow, whatever it is for the platform you're viewing through. It will help those platforms serve you up stuff that you like in the future, and potentially you'll see more of my streams. In any event, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.